Everybody. I am your host, Jeremy Mendoza. Welcome back. If you have attended these monthly webinars in the past, and welcome aboard if this is your first time. I'm excited to have you. Once again, I'm your host, Jeremy Mendoza. I'd like to just real quickly go over some housekeeping items. Would love for anybody to introduce themselves in the chat. Would like to try to get this to be as interactive as possible. You know, if you want to just give us your name, you know, where you're located, company, role, if you'd like. If you want to network and connect with anybody on LinkedIn, feel free to share your URL, your LinkedIn URL. And if you want to also type in the chat what you're expecting to gain out of today's session, that would help us drive the conversation as well. If you are here today, it's very likely that your company relies on you to grow revenue, whether it means you're in a sales role, a sales leadership role, a CEO, VP, director, you're somehow directly tied into your company's success from a revenue standpoint. In terms of industry, I'd say most of you are going to be in the technology SaaS industry. I'm sure there are others in here as well. Brief background on myself before we get into the program. I am the director of sales for a SaaS company, and it's called Endea, which we target manufacturing companies in the enterprise space. I'm also a founder of a tech startup called AnnexQ, where we have developed an online collaboration tool that's used for sales reps to better engage and communicate with their prospect during the sales cycle, from discovery meeting all the way to close. So one last time, I see people are kind of trickling in, just housekeeping items. Feel free to introduce yourselves, and it looks like some of you already have. Hey, Bob, it's great to see you. It's been a long time, but it's nice to see HCM EVP. Great. Tony Tom says hello. Awesome. Great. So you have some people in here as well. Yeah, introduce yourself, put your LinkedIn URL if you'd like, tell us what you'd hope to gain out of today. One thing I'd also like to remind everybody, when you do post in the chat, if you could just make sure that you're posting to all panelists and attendees, not just the panelists. That way everybody gets to see your post. So let me go over real quick the agenda before I introduce our guest, which I'm really excited about. We're going to go over some introductions, and we're going to talk about why here, why now, as we usually do. Then we'll get into the discussion, and we'll conclude with some announcements. So without further ado, hi, Susie. Thanks for the introduction, all the way from Chicago, so you're close to Tony. So welcome aboard. Thanks again. So without further ado, let me start with an introduction. First, I'll say, of course, we do have Tony Lanehart and Ryan Charleston. I'll start with Tony, who is a sales drummer for SEG. I think that's the coolest title I've ever seen for sales in sales. We're always trying to come up with that cool title, and I like that one. As a fractional VP of sales, Tony has gained vast experience building and rebuilding sales teams in dozens of industries. In his over 100 client engagements over the last 8 years, Tony has implemented processes and solutions that encompass the entire sales lifecycle, which almost always includes a healthy balance of LinkedIn. Before I get into introducing Ryan, Tony, is there anything you'd like to tell us or let the audience know about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, they can just make their own assumptions about what a sales drummer is, but you know, I've been in sales for 20 years. You know, I joke, my father was in sales and my mom's a therapist. So it was a really good combination for what I do now, which is in essence sales therapy. Maybe I should change my moniker, but that's a lot of the work that I do. So yeah, just excited to join the discussion today. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Glad to have you here. Next, we have Ryan Charleston, who is a digital marketer and sales enablement professional with experience working at eBay and Google, and has launched 8 startups over the past 18 years. As a founder of chief marketing strategist at LinkLeads, Ryan helps sales professionals and entrepreneurs establish a reliable pipeline of qualified B2B leads from LinkedIn with system-proven tools and strategies for prospecting, sales outreach, and lead generation. What about you, Ryan? Is there anything else or anything you'd like the audience to know about yourself?
No, you covered it. And in case you see, I have a little sidekick here. My cat will probably make a cameo every now and then. So, but yeah, you nailed it. That's a pretty good synopsis, and looking forward to the conversation here and hearing what the questions everyone has to say.
Nice, great. So with that said, to get started with the program, I'm going to have Tony kind of just give us a real quick, why LinkedIn is more important than ever, why now is the time to be talking about this with the landscape that we're in today's world. I'm going to hand it off to Tony, and I'm going to share my screen.
Yeah, right on. Thanks, Jeremy.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I'm going to share just 4 tenets here on why I'm seeing LinkedIn be more important than ever. I mean, let's just take a quick snapshot of in just the last 9 months, just the way that people have started engaging more and more and more on the platform during lockdown. You're seeing a lot of activity out there, right? So I think I've talked to a lot of my clients around this idea that it's a battle for attention, a battle for eyeballs. I mean, everybody's experience back in April, May, where they were getting invited to 10 webinars a day or a week. So LinkedIn I don't think it's the end all be all, but it's certainly one of the top conduits right now in the B2B business space to stay top of mind with your network, right? As a lot of people, we just can't get together in person right now. So, so as far as this first tenet goes, I mean, if you Google your name, unless you have something like Joe Smith, something very plain Jane, or you've done something really, really odd, your LinkedIn profile is going to be one of the first things that come up. So, I mean, I don't own TonyLenhart.com. I probably should, but the equivalent of that in the cyber world is my LinkedIn profile. So I want to control what people are seeing when they swing by my profile or maybe Google my name, right? So I want to own that personal brand. I think it's super, super important. The second thing I love, being a drummer, right? Staying in rhythm, right? You can follow anybody and everybody on LinkedIn, companies, prospects, competitors. And for me, it is a place where once I'm following the people that I want to follow, I'm picking up on things that I'm then leveraging in my sales outreach, which kind of leads me to my next point, Jeremy, I'm using LinkedIn to pick up on trigger events, insights for what might be happening in my certain verticals or industries, and what I call just simply microdose learning, right? Like I'm on the go and using my app a ton on LinkedIn. But a lot of you guys out there probably heard of Challenger Sale, right? Which has been out in the ecosystem now for 10 plus years.
Yeah.
And a lot of that, one of the core concepts around that is challenging your prospects, your buyers with fresh perspectives and ideas. And I think LinkedIn's a treasure trove for that type of stuff. And then lastly, you could take a sniper approach. I mean, it should be music to salespeople's ears that you get 2 guaranteed things on LinkedIn. One, they're going to get the message if you send it to them, because number 2, there's no gatekeepers. There's nobody impeding you getting to the person with hopefully the right person with the right message, right? So I think those are kind of my 4 big pillars on why I think LinkedIn is important. Ryan, would you add one to that maybe that you think is another key factor on why it's so important?
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty, but I think you nailed it at the very beginning with the, particularly with the time that we're living in right now, with everything that's happened with the pandemic. There's just a flood of activity on LinkedIn because this is the professional social network. And so when all these conferences and trade shows and everything get canceled or postponed indefinitely, everybody's going on to LinkedIn to network and find their prospects and connect. So it's become a more important channel than ever especially for B2B and connecting with your prospects online.
Yep, that's a great one. I mean, I saw a stat the other day. Who knows? I forget what the exact source was, but it was like 82% of buyers look you up on look up their person on LinkedIn before a meeting, right? I know I do. Jeremy, we were just joking about it before the webinar, doing some professional stalking, right? But I mean, it's it's a little bit. LinkedIn has become a little bit the Facebook for business. Again, in the last 9 months, you see people being a little bit more open, transparent, and authentic with representing themselves. Not, you know, I've seen a few pictures of people posting pictures of their kids or things related, but I mean, the family is the stuff that resonates. And right now it's like, all of us are under this like collective consciousness of like what we're going through. So I think, you know, again, people are just engaging more. So
I agree. And, you know, and to your point, Tony, what I've noticed recently is people are starting to post a little bit more on the personal side. And I know there's that sort of controversy where, you know, people say keep Facebook on Facebook, LinkedIn on LinkedIn. However, I do have to say that even in my experience, when I post something that may not be totally family or personal, but I had made a post of something I did for volunteering in the community. And I probably got more engagements just from that than I ever have in any of my professional, you know, posts. So with that, I think people like to kind of see who you are outside of your, you know, suit and tie, right? So
totally.
I like that you brought that up.
Yeah, and it's a good transition to kind of that next topic that I wanted to touch on, which is this idea of posting. And again, stats I saw from LinkedIn the other day, when you look at the population of people on LinkedIn, around 3% of people are actually posting content on LinkedIn. Which sounds crazy. It's most likely the truth, right? Because you're gonna have a certain percentage that just are never on the platform.
Yeah.
But I mean, so just understanding that stat alone, the fact of you starting to post something, you're already standing out from the rest of whatever that crowd is that you're trying to stand out from.
Right.
And you know, as far as frequency goes and things like that, there's plenty of discussion. I'd love to hear, you know, your guys' thoughts on it. But I'll cover a few thoughts, because I try to work with clients on this a lot, and I get a lot of things like, not sure what to do, I don't know how to say it, or when did I just forget, it takes time. And so maybe I can remove some of those questions or roadblocks in the mind. So as far as what to share, right? The thing you always historically saw was people sharing, you know, articles or industry news. And that you still see a lot of that, right? Organic straight text posts do very, very well. And again, the last 9 months, I don't mind a few emojis on a post. If you looked at mine, I have some on there. Like people are trying to connect, and I think it's just another way to do that in a fun way. Organic video, also you're starting to see a lot more of, and you're seeing that as a big trend that happened over the last kind of year and a half in sales, is video prospecting. And LinkedIn is a great place to you know, work your chops for doing video.
One thing I noticed LinkedIn recently put together, I don't know if you notice this or use it at all, are LinkedIn stories, right? Kind of what Facebook and Instagram has. So I don't know what your experience is on that, if that's something that's been useful. I have not tried it yet. I've watched the postings, but I've never actually posted anything just yet. Do you see that catching on in the professional world?
I'm not there yet. I might be showing my age. I may have just missed. I don't use stories on Facebook or Instagram either. So it's like, I looked at it the day it launched and it looked really interesting, but I don't see it getting a lot of traction. I know I'm not checking stories yet. We'll see. Ryan, do you have any? Are you a stories guy?
I think it could take off, but I think it's going to be very industry or niche specific. I think it's depending on your business. Some businesses will do really well with it, and then others won't. So I think it's going to be very sporadic. But I definitely think if you should experiment with it, and I'm actually looking at some options for myself to experiment with it. But I think in general, just video, whether it's in a story or in a direct message or in the feed, stands out more than anything. So.
Yeah, that's fair. You know, to my earlier statistic I shared, 3% are posting. So then to actually get those people to leap into stories, like, let's just get people to actually post relevant, valuable content, right? At first, and before they can even get to stories. So those are some ideas on types. Now I'll take a pause here. Like, we could go super deep on the LinkedIn algorithm, which is constantly changing as far as, you know, what people are looking at and what trends well. But LinkedIn fancies itself a publishing platform, and when you post articles to, you know, third-party links or third-party anything, LinkedIn doesn't like it, right? Because they want you to stay on linkedin.com. So you know, when you are sharing insights or articles, it's good to share any type of third-party links in the comment section when you're posting,
Yeah.
Because just you're doing a little bit of gaming of the algorithm there, but you're going to get more eyeballs on it by sharing your original thought or idea or takeaway in the actual post with your opinion. That's what LinkedIn wants to see.
Right.
And then if you need a, supporting document or articles or stuff, you drop that in the comments. And that's a way to just, again, for yourself, get more views on your post.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like it.
And then as far as like, okay, so great, Tony, you can do those different things, but then what do you actually talk about when you do a video, when you do post? I tell you and you can load up kind of the rest of those last couple bullet points on this slide, Jeremy, but one place I'm going to is my calendar, right? I have a Friday routine where I do my debrief of the week. And part of that is looking through all my meetings I had that week, prospect calls, client meetings, one-on-ones with salespeople, whatever it might be, is like, where's a relevant, valuable story that might be impactful? Like that's where I'm trying to bring real-time context to what's happening in the field right now.
Yeah.
And then, I've started to see people do this, is where they'll do a post out of a story like that, or I've shared something, and then down in the comments, I'm starting to tag people that I want to see this. Like, hey, we talked about this last week, like check this out, and almost thanking them for sparking the idea of putting this out there, right?
Yeah, I think tagging is key. It gets more people. It shows up more on the home feed, and it also, as obviously it tags the person you're tagging, so that person is likely to look at it, make a comment, and so forth. So I think tagging, I've noticed, yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
as I start doing more of that.
Yeah, and like I say, when appropriate, you don't want to be tagging like a bunch of people that you're not connected to or that are like superstars just so you hope that you get on their radar. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
But you can make it very directed, and for those that don't know how to tag, it's simply just typing the @ sign and starting to type their name, and they're going to pop right up, and they're going to get an indicator that you tagged them, right?
Right.
So at the end of the day, like why are you doing it at all, posting, right? Like I'm trying to stay top of mind with my network. When somebody does look me up on LinkedIn, the 82% of people that look me up before a meeting, I want them to see that I have my finger on the pulse, right? Like I am putting myself out there. I have an opinion. I'm putting a flag in the ground, whatever euphemism you want to use, but they see that I'm engaging with my network and my audience, right? And so that's one, I'm saying top of mind. I show that I'm hopefully adding value, but that last point, like I'm relevant, I'm relatable, and I'm trying to help my network with the stories. Not, that's one mistake that I see is people trying to sell on their posts, and there's a gray area there, but you got to be careful there too, because that's another thing. LinkedIn will like suppress your posts if they know that you're like blatantly trying to sell your services.
Right. Yeah, I think that since this pandemic, I know for me, I've seen a lot of, quote unquote sales posts and even sales engagements that, are surprising to me in that it's not very personal, and there's no context behind it other than, connection, or a post that's just, hey, here's an offer, or here's what I'm doing. And I don't know, to me, I feel like that may potentially ruin your brand if you're, overly doing that. Yeah.
It can. So one, one tool that I've used in the past, I don't use as much now, but it's called Buffer. Competitors out there called like Hootsuite, people have heard of, and Sprout Social here in Chicago is more for like enterprise level. But for a free, if you want, it basically helps you, auto load in some posts and just sequence them. So, you can just go in once a week as opposed to having to think about it constantly.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because I did have a few questions from the audience on that prior to the meeting on learning about tools. So for those of you who don't know, Tony mentioned Buffer and Hootsuite. Those are out there. And what's nice about that is if you're on multiple social media platforms, instead of having to just post on LinkedIn or just Twitter and having to do it manually each time, you can go into a system like Buffer, create one post, and it'll post simultaneously to all your social media accounts. And furthermore, you can actually schedule when that is. So you could actually do everything ahead of time. So instead of having to set your reminder to make a post on Wednesday and Friday, you could actually do everything in the beginning of the week and have whatever algorithm that you want for it to be scheduled to post at that particular time. And that's what I've used it for. I don't know if Ryan or Tony, if you use it for anything else. I know that they're constantly improving their program, but that's been a huge time saver for me. And it's just easy to have that piece automated so that I don't have to think about it the rest of the week.
Yep. Yeah, I've used all of those solutions at one point or another. Sprout Social, I have a lot of experience with. Hootsuite as well. Buffer from the very beginning. So I would say any of those tools are really helpful.
Yeah. So since Ryan, sounds like you've had the most experience with the different tools. I've only used Buffer, and I've tried Hootsuite. And Susie has a question here. It's a good question. Are those program solutions pricey? So it is a SaaS subscription. I will say this: there is a free. There are free versions of it, and it may be just enough for you if you only have 3. I think the maximum is 3 accounts, meaning you could use, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, right? Or LinkedIn, Twitter, whatever those 3 are. But if you want to add more, then that's where you start paying that monthly price. And I don't know exactly what that price is. I think it can range from, $15 upwards to $50. Don't quote me on that. But
they go from like $50. They can go all the way up to $500.
Oh, is it that much? Okay.
Like enterprise is like up there in the 200s, or I haven't looked at it recently, but I think Hootsuite might be the easiest or most affordable to get started with, I think.
Okay. Yeah. So Susie, hopefully that answers your question. For anybody else, I would recommend just trying the free version first and then see if it makes sense. And obviously if you're planning to do multiple posts, then that's when you might need to upgrade.
Okay. Well, good. Well, hopefully that sheds some light on just posting. And then, I'd say the biggest, one of the biggest mistakes I see people do is just like not taking action. Like I said, like taking action will help generate new, fresh ideas for you. It's unfortunate when you just see people leave their profiles very stagnant. Like I'm on calls all day, right? With whether it's clients or prospects, and I'm going in every probably 2 or 3 months and changing my about section, just because like I'll say something during a meeting and I can just see the light bulb go off with the person I'm talking to and be like, oh, right, that really resonates. I'm gonna use that somewhere. And so that's where I try and play around and just keep it fresh when people are coming back. But
right.
As far as actions to take is like, take the time to like update, give yourself your profile an overhaul, have that good written out about section, unique headline. And like I talked about at the very top, kind of owning that brand. Now the mobile app, I mentioned it before, but it's one of my favorite things about the mobile app that I haven't touched on, and this isn't kind of a tips or tricks idea, but the mobile app, once you're connected to somebody, you can do voice and video drops right through the app.
Yes.
I don't think it's been around probably for over a year now, but a lot of people just don't know it.
People don't know it, or people don't even use it. And I agree with you. It's a huge differentiator when you're contacting your prospects or clients this way, especially if you know they're active on LinkedIn.
No, absolutely. It's such a unique way to engage. It's a pattern disrupt, right? They're used to getting a cold email, but they're like, I literally set a meeting one time because I voice memoed the guy back and he wrote me back. He's like, holy cow, I didn't even know you could do this. This is crazy. He's like, we should talk. So that's a fun one. So play around with that on the app if you haven't.
Yeah, just to reiterate, I want to reiterate because it really is, I think, when I've used it, I've certainly gotten responses. And I've actually, when I first found out, somebody had reached out to me that way as well. So if you go into your app, you can actually, it's similar to a text message, right? You hold it down, you can leave a quick voice message, say, hey, I just came across your profile. I'm curious to know, whatever question you have, or, would be interested in getting to learn more about the challenges you face. The video piece, though, I have not used yet, though, but I'm definitely going to start using that. I didn't even know that they had it.
You got to video drop somebody. That's even a little gutsier, right?
Yeah, exactly.
No virtual backgrounds when you're doing a LinkedIn video drop. It's
authentic. It's about being authentic.
Cats and all.
Right. Yeah. And I think nowadays with everybody doing Zoom, it's kind of normal now, right? I mean, no one really cares about the perfect background, perfect lighting.
Right on cue.
So yeah, I'm definitely going to start using that. But no, that's a good tip. I appreciate that.
Yeah, you bet, man. And then we could transition out, but as I say there, it's like build up and nurture that network. You do want to get to that point where you have 500 plus connections, and you just never know where people are going to land.
Yeah.
I've had doors opened up for me at places that you never would have thought but been able to happen just because you reach out. And I think for the majority, and even before the pandemic and since, people want to help other people. So I know I'm always willing to open a door for people if they reach out and say, hey, I see you're connected, and I'm going to do what I can.
Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And Alexandria had a nice comment here. It gets difficult when you're managing several business social accounts. I have many clients right now that each have their own Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter. I mean, it's going crazy. I mean, who knows? Maybe we're going to see each other on TikTok doing, dances these days on. But I wanted to ask a few questions before we get into Ryan talking about some of the problems that we're facing. In terms of profile, one thing I've learned from some of your trainings, Tony, that I've really taken with me over the years is how to set up my profile in a way that is me. It's my brand. You mentioned it earlier. It's a you.com. It's kind of your own website in a sense. And when LinkedIn first came out, I remember it was a recruitment tool. It was all about your resume and your experience.
Online resume. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And now it's a lot more than that. Now it's like I said, I posted something about volunteering in the community, right? And now it's really about your brand in the professional world. Can you give us some quick tips as to what I guess some key components on what to include in our profile? I think that's a good question for the audience, because a lot of times, and there are probably people here in this audience as well that still have that resume look, right?
Mm-hmm.
Instead of the branding look. So can you give us some key components as to what we should have in our profile?
I'll offer 3 very tactical things you can do to help just polish up the brand. One is your headline. So they see your picture, they see your name. When you connect to somebody, they also see your headline, which LinkedIn gives you 125 characters at the top to get creative. The default thing you see people do is title at company, right? Because that's the default. But your LinkedIn headline in 125 characters, you should be able to tell people who you are, what you do, and who you help in that title, right? And you want to do
exactly
it
what I say. Yep.
You want to do it in kind of a creative. What is your voice? But is it creative? Is it inquisitive? Is it authoritative? Is it humorous? Whatever it might be. But you want it to jump out and be creative.
So nothing like something. So avoid saying things like sales rep at ABC company. Your headline should say something.
It could be a component because it's saying a little bit of who you are.
Yeah.
Right? But more like what you do and who you help. Right.
Kind of a personal, it's like a personal value proposition. It's like, what do you do? It's like everybody can have. We all have titles. We all work for a company, but it's like, what do you actually do? Who do you help? What's your claim to fame? What's your superpower? Like put that in your title, and you'll get. So I think that speaks more volume.
And I noticed that on your guys' profiles, and I've done the same thing myself. Like for you, Tony, sales drummer, and you talk about what you do. So as you go through your other 2, I'd love to see if anyone in the audience has something that they'd like to share that they have in their headline, or something creative, or something that stands out. I'd love to see what the audience has.
Second thing I would say in the about section, and I'm going to do an A and B, but if you haven't watched the Simon Sinek TED Talk, how great leaders inspire action. It's the most watched TED Talk of all time. He wrote the book, The Power of Why, but I like to get a sense of why people do what they do in their about section. And then also that's about them, but also make the about section about who's reading it, right? You're trying to write that about section like your ideal prospect is reading it. So help them self-identify, like speak to, I help these type of people with these type of problems, achieve these type of goals, whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
So don't make it all about you, make it a little bit about them.
Right.
And then lastly, I would say, if you have side hustles, if you volunteer, if you, did something special in your college, like I'm a hard on the sleeve guy. So I'm just saying share that stuff. Because to me, LinkedIn at the end of the day is about striking a personal chord with whoever you're connecting with to hopefully move the relationship forward. And you never know what that might resonate with them. So I think painting the full picture, again, even if it's a Zumba instructor on the side, like put that, I don't know, like, have fun with it. Be yourself, and authenticity, I think is overall generally a good thing. So,
yeah, I like it. And we also, that's great feedback. And I think that's That's so key if for your brand. I like the about us. People kind of forget to even put that in the summary. A lot of people leave that blank, right? I think it's important to definitely have that. And I saw, I can't remember the exact statistic, but I've heard that most people, when they view your profile, they don't get past the summary. They like to look at the headline and they read the summary, and they don't really look past. It's rare they look past that unless you're a recruiter or somebody hiring. But
yeah, or a sales rep trying to stalk on your prospect.
Yeah, exactly.
Like
so
you do, Jeremy, right?
Yeah, so funny, real quick story for the audience. Probably something you'll want to be careful with when sharing your screen. Luckily, my prospect, this was yesterday, had good humor about it. But I went to share my screen to show my demo, and I shared the wrong screen, and it was her profile was up, and I was like, okay, as I'm creeping your profile, let me just put in my demo. But yeah, you'll want to do that before the call for sure. Peter, thanks for your comment. I appreciate that. So Peter says that polls seem to get attention too, and I'm glad that you brought that up, Peter, because that's something, I don't know how new that is, but I've seen more and more of that lately, and that actually gets me engaged, because if you look at the polls, they'll ask a question and you can click your answer, but what's cool about it is you don't get to see the results unless you answer it. So sometimes if you get a nice engaging question, like, hey, how many of you out there are doing this? And it'll give you multiple choice. And then I'm curious too. And the only way I can see it is if I click an answer, and then you get to see the percentages of what people answer. So I like that. That's a really good idea. I'm going to start using that as well. Have you guys used polls at all?
Yep. I've used them. Not as much.
Give us an example of what you would.
I did one recently. I think it was a couple months ago. I was just curious, and I kind of already knew the answer. I just wanted to see what people would say or how many would actually engage with it. And I said, so it was something about politics. I said, should politics be discussed on LinkedIn? And I was like, I know what the answer is going to be. Most people are like, no, keep this off. Because what I did is I started seeing some political things being posted. I was like, oh no, here we go. I was like, this is gonna start on LinkedIn. So I posed that question, and it was like 85 or 90% said no, like, no political discussions on LinkedIn. But that was just one poll that I did.
And I guess as whoever does the poll, right? You see everybody that submitted a click, right?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Which I think is that's pretty powerful too, especially if it can tie to something that, of course, comes back to your product, service, business.
Absolutely. Thanks, Peter, for sharing that link. Peter shared an example of a poll. So if you guys are in the chat, go ahead and click on that, and you'll definitely see that. What I want to get into next, actually, I'm excited about, is Ryan talking about some of the different problems that we're doing on LinkedIn and lead generation as a whole. And I think this will be interesting, and we'll have some different opinions when it comes to the prospecting piece. But why don't I share my screen once again, and then Ryan, you can kind of go through this.
So I created this this slide to kind of talk about some key problems that I know a lot of us in sales and even in marketing will face. And I kind of made a joke about it. 99 problems, but 6 of them are with lead generation.
Jay-Z reference, by the way.
Yeah. I think everybody out here is at an age that knows who Jay-Z is. But yeah, so the first one is time. I think the key thing with time is, how do you be more efficient with your time and doing sales outreach? This, going on LinkedIn, I think some people are like, oh man, is this going to take me, 3-4 hours of my day every day? So the question is always around timing. That's the first problem I think you address. And the way I do it, at least from the outreach perspective, is I use a tool to sort of automate the outreach. But I don't do it just randomly. I use Sales Navigator. I get very, very specific with who I'm targeting. And I don't abuse it. I don't go over the limits that, will flag your account. So I make very sparing use of that. Then I also do the direct outreach without automation. But I think you just have to be very, I think in dealing with the time component is just make sure you're very targeted and then you're not being too broad, and then make use of some tools that you can to at least automate the outreach, so you're not cut and paste the same message to everyone. You want to be customized with it, and then you also want to do very customized messages outside of the automation. So it's a kind of a combination of both.
But really quick, when it comes to Sales Navigator, and for those of you who don't know, and I assume probably most of us do or already use Sales Navigator. So Sales Navigator is just an added tool on LinkedIn, and it's really specifically for sales professionals. And I've used it for years. I really like it because you get, you get some added benefits that you wouldn't get with just your normal LinkedIn. You can filter searches depending on who you're targeting. You can direct message people who typically you wouldn't be able to direct message unless you were a first connection. So there are definitely benefits to Sales Navigator. If anyone has any questions about it or comments, love to hear it. But just want to make sure that we're all on the same page when it comes to what Sales Navigator is. But go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, and so the second one is obviously money. We want to keep costs under control. I work with startups all the way up to mid-sized businesses. So depending on your budget, we're all, no matter what, we're always looking to how do we keep costs under control, specifically when it comes to cost per lead or cost per acquisition. You don't want to overspend, especially on ad campaigns if you're going to do ads. Sometimes if you're on a tight budget, you're not even going to approach ads. Or if you are doing ads, maybe there's some more organic options or direct outreach like what I do that can sort of augment that and then bring your cost down or overall cost down when it comes to cost per lead.
What kind of success are you having when it comes to paid ads, your clients?
Yeah, so it's hit or miss, and like you really do have to have a mindset. I think it has to be a mindset of branding. Unless you have a specific product, or if you're trying to get people to sign up for a webinar, or I have one client that's really just all about, we've created some great video content. We just want people to see the video. So they're doing LinkedIn ad campaigns with a focus on getting more video views on the videos that they've already posted on their LinkedIn page. And so it's just like, whatever your goal is, you have to match the budget to that goal and understand like, hey, am I really just trying to get leads, qualified leads? And if so, I need to spend X amount and get Y leads because my cost per lead has to be at a certain level. So I think it's just understanding what your goals are, how much you can spend, and making sure you're picking the right type of marketing tactic or strategy to match that.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and then obviously whatever you're doing, and this is one thing that I get into a lot, is how do we actually ensure the leads coming from LinkedIn are high quality and at least qualified enough to engage with, right? So if you're reaching out to people, whether it's manually or in some sort of automated fashion, starting with LinkedIn Sales Navigator, as I said, that's a great way to kind of top level, narrow your focus. And then you start narrowing your focus when you start doing the messaging. You want to start out high level, connect with them, start understanding them, start building the relationship, start building trust and rapport. And then you don't get down into actually even talking anything about you or what you do until they actually ask, or if they look at your profile naturally. I think when somebody starts a dialogue with you on LinkedIn, they're going to look at your profile. And I think you want to have some questions, like problem questions in there to try to qualify,
I think the Sales Navigator, that's another key component, is being able to qualify the leads that you have in the context that you're getting in contact with, because it gives you insights about the organization, other people they're connected with, their growth, the company's growth, are they hiring, how many, things like that. And they'll actually suggest LinkedIn Navigator will suggest more people or leads like that. So it's very nice. And one thing I wanted to get into really quickly as we're talking about quality is, there's always a question about quantity versus quality, right? I mean, you have some people who have multiple connections, thousands even, and then you have some with, a few hundred. What are your thoughts, Ryan, on quantity versus quality? Do we try to connect with anybody and everybody, or do we be a little picky about who we're connected with? And I'd love to get your thoughts on that as well, Tony.
Yeah, I think that's another area where it's like, that I think depends on your level. Like if you're entry level, mid level, or senior level sales or marketing, like you're gonna have, like if you're just starting out and you got very few connections, I think you're in this mindset of, my network, network, meet everybody, connect with everybody kind of thing. And as you get kind of farther along in your career, you might kind of be more along the lines of, I'm only wanting to connect with certain people. It also might be related to the types of, if you're in sales and you're looking for certain types of clients, if you have a high ticket item or service where you're selling enterprise and it's, $100K, $1 million deals, the pool that you're going after is probably smaller. So the number of people you're going to want to connect with is smaller. So I think these different variables play a role in like, who you connect with, but I think, or I guess the quantity of who you connect with. But I think ultimately at the end of the day, you want to connect in terms of content, like we were talking about earlier. The larger your network, obviously, the more people have a chance of seeing the content that you post.
Yeah.
And so ultimately, if you're wanting to kind of do more thought leadership stuff and you just want to get your brand out there and get your name out there, then obviously connecting with people that you feel will find that information useful is, yeah. I have.
What about you, Tony? Quantity? How many did you say?
I was just gonna say I have 12,000 right now.
Oh my God.
If anybody wants to know, and if they don't know it already, LinkedIn has a maximum of 30,000 connections. You can only connect with 30,000 people. So once you hit that limit, they can only follow you after that.
Oh, okay, interesting.
Yeah.
What about you, Tony? Quantity or quality?
Yeah, I'm kind of a blend. I would say, I used to be like, I'm only connecting with people when I've, shook their hand or fist bumped them or whatever we do these days.
Yeah.
I've kind of leaned toward quantity now, but if I'm going after quantity, I want the right quality, right? Like me, I work with business owners, VPs of sales, CSOs, chief growth officers. Like if I'm going to throw out a bunch of connections, I'm trying to target it to the people that I think that I can help the most, right? And that I want to work with.
Yeah.
So that's my thought on it. But I mean, the quote that rings in my mind, or the saying, goes back to an old Jeffrey Gitomer book that I'm sure half of the audience has read out there, the Little Red Book of Selling. He had a line in there that said, your network determines your net worth. And I've always loved that. It's like, it kind of resonates in the back of my mind. And it's like, yeah, if I'm connecting with the right people and I'm adding value and I'm staying top of mind when it is time to reach out, to Ryan's point, right? You pick up on a trigger event, then you never know. So I say, I say connect, but I still get a ton of randos that try to connect with me that I just, no.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I would say I'm pretty much the same. I find myself now actually turning down or ignoring some requests where it's like, I think if you're going to connect with somebody, or if you're going to want to connect with somebody else, you obviously have to know a little bit about them. Does it make sense? Can you both provide value to each other in some way, even if you're not selling to each other any products or services? If there's something that you look at their profile and like, yeah, this looks like somebody I want in my network, or vice versa. It's like, so I think as you get further along in your career or with whatever you're doing in your goals for sales, you start to get a little bit more picky in that.
Yeah. Quick question from the audience here. Jason Pope, thanks for your question. Any thoughts on Lion, Lion? I think it's LinkedIn Open Networking. I'm not familiar with that.
Yeah, you used to see people have that tag, like I'm a Lion, LinkedIn Open, like I accept anybody's connections.
Okay.
I don't see people doing that as much anymore. Of course, there are people out there, but I mean, my role is just always personalize the connection requests, right? LinkedIn gives you 300 characters. When people don't do it, I think it looks lazy. And when you do go get those connection requests, it is possible to reply to people without connecting, which is what I do. If you open up the request, you can reply back and be like, hey, have we met? Or is there a reason you want to connect? Right? I've done that.
Yeah.
And I'll either get this long email back or it's just crickets. So it's like, I'm not going to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Well,
yeah, I think
great.
being direct and honest and straightforward and why you're trying to connect from the very beginning is always helpful too. Like even if people don't want to connect, then at least you were honest in what your approach and why you wanted to connect with them, as opposed to maybe trying to be super friendly and kind of hide your motive. It's like
Yeah.
So. Yeah, but I have heard it's called, and I'm laughing at Peter's comment in the chat. He's like cold calling him back when he gets a connection request. That's great. But I've heard it being, I've heard it referred. This isn't my saying, but I've heard it referred to as being pitch slapped. When you get a connection, you get a connection request, and then immediately somebody tries to pitch you their product. So that's another in the bad column. You don't want to pitch slap somebody. So.
Exactly.
Yeah, I put it in the chat. I put it in the chat in case anybody misunderstood what you said.
Yeah.
No, that's a good point. Yeah. Thanks for that. Yeah, Peter. And it's true. I mean, if someone's reaching out to me, I'll do the same thing. If someone reaches out to me, I may not necessarily call them, but I'll say, great, let's get on the calendar, right? Mm-hmm. So, and to Peter's point, if you reach out to me and I ask to connect and let's talk, then don't get upset because you reach out to me, right? So yeah.
That's actually how me and Jeremy met. It was actually so I actually sent him an automated message. He connected with me, and then we started a dialogue, and then here we are. So
yeah. So let's get into reliability.
Yeah. So the question of reliability is just how to build a stream, a good steady stream of B2B leads that will consistently fill that pipeline. And this is always, I think, difficult for some companies that aren't really on LinkedIn or haven't even done anything on LinkedIn. They're just kind of starting from scratch, and maybe they are experiencing some difficulties in the other ways that they've been generating leads before. So I had a couple clients this year that obviously were getting most of their leads prior to March from trade shows and conferences and such. And then when that got shut down, they're like, oh crap, where do we go to get our leads? And so I started helping them with LinkedIn ads first, and then integrated some of the direct outreach programs to kind of keep that steady flow. You want to constantly be, and some companies will have the budget to hire SDRs, will kind of just go at it every day and kind of constantly cold calling and emailing and going on LinkedIn. But many different tactics here, but I think the one that I focus on obviously is the direct outreach, and then sometimes augmenting with content and ads where appropriate. And then obviously at the high level here, what we're trying to do is just get your presence and reach, like Tony was talking about before. It's all about your brand, getting awareness of yourself, your product or service through LinkedIn. And what I like to do here is, my saying is always focus on problems, not products. When it comes to that whole issue of what to say, how to say it, whether it's through a message or an invite request or the content that you're actually creating to post on LinkedIn, always start in your mind with knowing your customer, knowing your prospects and what problems they're going through on a day-to-day basis. What are their challenges? What are their issues? And then develop content around that. Even if it's something real simple, a quick post or the content you share or original content you create from a blog post or a video, whatever it is, make sure it ties back to something that your prospect is sort of dealing with. Usually it's a problem that they're trying to solve, or even how-to things like how to use Sales Navigator, how to optimize your profile, things like that. And then obviously with volume, we want quality, but we also want volume. How do we ensure we get that volume? And I've seen this happen. I've experienced this myself and from my clients, where sometimes I get too many leads, and that's also a problem, because now what's happening is everybody wants to get on the phone with you, and then you got all these meetings booked up, but then you get too many meetings, sometimes with the wrong people or those that aren't necessarily qualified. So it's kind of like turning the knobs of quality and quantity here, as far as like making sure you're asking the right questions in your dialogue. Make sure you're using Sales Navigator, and even making use of a little tip here. Use the Boolean expression in the keyword field if you're using Sales Navigator, and use like quotes around words to really find keywords that are in those people's profiles. So don't just based on the different filters that you can use, but also use the keywords so you can narrow that more. And that'll give you a little less volume, but more quality. So that's just a little tip there.
Your next month's training should be on Boolean search, Jeremy.
Yeah, right.
It's real simple.
I do actually have a question from, looks like somebody had asked a question. Sharon, thanks for your question. Thoughts on phone cold calling? I know we just touched on it briefly, but maybe Sharon, if you want to expand a little bit on what you mean by that, but I'd assume your thoughts would be, your question would be around what are your thoughts on cold calling in conjunction with prospecting through LinkedIn. I want to get your guys' thoughts on that. I don't do a whole lot of cold calling from LinkedIn. In other words, when you say cold calling, I guess I think of actually picking up the phone and calling, but I do cold intros on LinkedIn, either direct message, or if I connect with them and their email is in their contacts, I'll reach out to them and say, thanks for the connection. Most people don't check their inbox in LinkedIn, so I thought I'd reach out to you via email. So that's probably the extent of cold calling that I do. Wanted to get your thoughts, and again, Sharon, if you had something else to add to that, please do. But what are your thoughts on cold calling in conjunction with LinkedIn?
Ryan, you want to take that one first?
So this is kind of, I have good discussions about this with a lot of people about, is cold calling dead and whatnot. And I feel like LinkedIn makes it so that we never actually have to do cold calls. We could do warm calls. So we can know something about the people, and we can actually get sometimes a response, and even if it's just they accepted your invite or whatever, like, you know, a little bit about them, maybe they posted some content. So I don't feel like, as opposed to like back in the day, I remember just going down a list and just dialing for dollars, you know.
Yeah.
And it's like you had no idea like, you know, anything about them. What you know, LinkedIn is great because you can just, they posted something, you can even use that as, well, even if you have to leave a message, you can say, hey, I saw you posted this thing and on LinkedIn, and or if you already connected with them. So I feel like I don't really do ever any cold calls anymore.
That's a good point.
I think more warm.
Yeah, everything's warm,
Yeah.
and it doesn't even have to do necessarily with what you're trying to present or anything like that. I did, you know, I saw somebody who I was targeting do a post on veterans, military veterans, had nothing to do with each other's business, but she just did a post, and I said, and all I did was replied to the comment saying, hey, I love what you're doing for veterans. My dad's a U.S. Navy veteran, and we started a conversation, and next thing you know, we're engaged in a process. So, you know, to your point, there really is no need to have a cold conversation these days.
I disagree.
Really? Okay, let's hear it.
Gracefully disagree.
Yeah, okay.
Now, I've made thousands of phone calls over the years, and I've probably gotten like 6 callbacks, right? Like, people don't call you back from voicemails.
No.
When they do, it's like, it's a Hail Mary.
Yeah.
But what it does is it shows that you're actual real live human. They hear your voice. And number 2, what I'm doing if I'm calling and I'm not getting a hold of somebody, I'm pointing them to the other stuff, right? I'm pointing them to the email. I'm pointing them to the LinkedIn. I'm whatever. But all the data out there shows when you do like that multiple methods of outreach, you're increasing your odds. Now, again, this goes back to quality and quantity and variables of what industry you're in and all this stuff. But the other big part of you know, my business, Jeremy, you know, this is like, we run like a farm team system for sales reps in Chicago. Right. Yep. So we groom them up, and we have 80 sales reps that are on the phones and email and LinkedIn. And when I look at the board of the meetings that we set, 75% are still coming from the phone.
Nice.
You have a percentage from LinkedIn, percentage from email for sure, but it's still very viable. We're still
I like that.
People are
Nice
still picking up the
perspective.
phone.
Yeah.
So.
Sharon says nice perspective as well. It's just that phone just gets so heavy, you know, especially as a
Oh,
on.
and especially
You know?
the more years, you get up there and you've been there, bought the T-shirt, right? You're like,
Yeah,
oh, yeah,
exactly.
I know what this cold call thing.
Right.
One comment on that. I actually talked to a client recently who we got on this conversation too about cold calling, and they were telling me that they were having a more difficult time now reaching people by phone, because a lot of the calls they used to do, they would like get a receptionist or something, and they get sent over to, you know, their extension or whatever. And now they can't go through these phone company systems, and they're calling cell phones, and they're having a little bit more difficult time getting, because if somebody doesn't see them, they don't recognize the number, they may not answer. So you have to leave your, so in terms of leaving a message, you can still leave a message, but getting an actual answer has been a little bit more difficult. I had that conversation recently.
Yeah.
Hey, real quick, we have about 5 minutes, and I want to wrap up. Before we do, as we wrap up, I'm going to give Ryan and Tony a chance to talk a little bit more about what they do, and then potentially give an offer for everyone who's attended here. But I do have another question that came up as well that I think is a good question. When do you connect with a prospect? Before the meeting, after the meeting? When would be a good time to actually connect, especially when they know that you've been looking at their profile and they know that you're about to engage in a conversation? What would be, that was a question from Susie, so I appreciate that, Susie.
Yeah. You know, from a timing perspective, you know, if you have it, talk to them on the phone. If they have stopped by your profile, I think those are each trigger events where you could send a connection request, even like before a meeting. Let's say you do engage with them and they're setting a meeting to talk to you. Absolutely, because it shows also that you're doing your research and your homework and your due diligence. So I say be proactive with it, but if it's part of like an overall cadence of outreach, you know, a connection request almost might be like a last ditch effort if they haven't responded to anything else.
Okay.
That's my thought.
Anything to add on that, Ryan?
Yeah, I agree with that sentiment. And I would just say that, you know, connect with somebody when you're ready, connect with somebody when it makes sense. You know, if you have a meeting already scheduled with them, or if you've had some sort of contact with them in the past, trying to connect with them on LinkedIn, maybe send them an email if they're not being responsive. But if it's just first time you've, you know, visited somebody's profile, you know, like, oh, I want to connect with this person. If you just have something quick you want to say and connect with them, then just do it.
Yeah.
I just, from that angle, I just don't really overthink it too much.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Makes sense. Well, thanks again. Let's we kind of segued into this, but Tony, tell us a little bit more about SEG and why somebody here in this audience might want to contact you.
Yeah, for sure. You had mentioned at the top of the call, I do, you know, these fractional or interim sales leadership roles. A lot of these are, you know, for business owners that are also the sales managers, right? And they don't have the time, energy, patience, bandwidth, or desire to do it. So I help them put in some processes to make it easier. And then I alluded to our farm team system is really the biggest piece of what we do. We've groomed 500 sales reps the last 6 years and help them eventually get promoted onto their clients. So I'm constantly rolling up my sleeves in the trenches, working with them on LinkedIn and cold calling and all those different things around the top of the funnel. But I'll just throw it out there to the crowd that's with us that if you do have a sales team, handful of reps up to whatever, I'm happy to do a free kind of just 1 hour LinkedIn deep dive that'll build on, you know, the couple of slides and things that I talked about on building out a profile, engaging with your audience, and just really leveraging the platform for what it's worth. So I'll throw that out there if anybody would like to take me up on it. You'd find me on LinkedIn, of course.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And then Ryan, please tell us why somebody here might want to contact you.
Yeah, so you go to the next slide, I think. Yeah, so this is, you can see this on my website. If you're in need, like I said, I focus on solving the problems of getting that engine going, of generating some leads. So if you're kind of haven't done much on LinkedIn, or maybe you're not getting the results that you want on LinkedIn, and you don't want to break the bank doing it, and you want to start doing some tests and start getting some outreach and scaling that outreach up, I have a service that does that. It does leverage a tool that allows you to automate the outreach. And then I work with my clients to develop everything from the strategy for messaging, going through a deep dive on Sales Navigator, the whole optimization of your personal and business profile, and then managing the campaigns and optimizing them month to month to get you the best results. So I have performance-based pricing plans, as you see here, which just a small monthly fee, and then you just pay a per qualified lead fee. And these are based on the size of deals that you're going after. So if you're a small business or a startup and your deals are 10K or less, or your LTV is 10K or less, then you're looking at $99 a month. And then all the way up to sort of enterprise, you're doing large contracts, going after bigger fish, the whales. That's the LinkLeads Pro.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Everybody's going to get a follow-up email with their contact information. Definitely value your feedback. I do have a request to please complete a short survey, which will be directly after this. Once you log out, you'll also get a link on a follow-up email. Responses are anonymous, and it really just helps us to determine what topics you guys want to see covered in the future. Our next event is going to be, it's every second Wednesday, so January 13th in the new year, 2021, 12 p.m. Pacific, same time. It's going to be on building rapport and relationships in a digital world. I have a special guest who's an expert in this as well, and you'll definitely want to be there for that. This really concludes our session for today. Like I said, we have contact information. It looks like I have a few last minute comments and questions. I'm happy to stick around for a few minutes if anybody wants to stay, and Tony and Ryan, feel free if you have another call I need to go, we'll make sure that we can get people in touch with you as needed. But this concludes this session, and if anyone is ready to jump off now, don't think you're being rude, but I will stick around, and I once again appreciate everybody's time and hope to see you guys next month.
Yeah, thanks everybody.
Thank you. I'll hang around.
Yeah, I got a couple more minutes.
Okay. Yeah.
I'll hang
looks like
around.
We got, if Vishal, hope I'm saying your name correctly. Looks like you did jump on a little late.